Hi, it's Lisa Starr, and it is the weekend version of the Natural Time podcast in video form here on YouTube. And Natural Time is a teaching on Mayan astrology for our modern age. I am not the person that came up with all the modern nomenclature. Jose Arguelles did, and he has passed. But I am in his lineage very faithfully, and this is not bypassing any modernization and going back to the ancient Maya or like the living Maya now. I think they're called the Quiche Maya. Like, I've never sat in those circles in the Yucatan Peninsula. Instead, I have been paying attention to the calendars that descend from the ancient Maya, a little bit of anglicized language to their names now. I've been following them for 25 years every day. I have never missed a day. Maybe it's late in the day when I'm all, oh, wait, I haven't even thought about today, but I've always caught myself. And so I'm a devotee. And I'm happy to tell you about what's going on here in the Zolkin calendar, which is spelled Tzolkin, and all it means is day count. That's a translation from the Mayan language of day count. It sounds like soul count to me. I think that's a perfectly appropriate inference, but it isn't exactly etymologically correct. So it's a count of days, but for the Maya, they were counting in this particular calendar, the Zolkin, just a 260-day cycle, which is the same as gestation in the womb. So it's magical. It's magical to switch over from time being only about the Earth's trip around the sun and to have time be a concept, construct, cyclical, ceremonial reverence for what happens to us before we're born and our birthdays start counting. I am going to be talking each time we tune in about wave spells, which are always the length of 13. 13 was a magic number to the Maya, and these cycles of 13 are really authentic and original and ancient. It's just a coincidence or a happy mystical truth that people have been interested in 13 for a long time in all different parts of the world. And I think the missing information where we have been also shown that it's like an unlucky number, except I think most of us have flipped the script on that. We're like, no, it's really lucky. But it was more common because there were so many lunar calendars before this Gregorian 12-month count that were based on 13 months in the year. So 13 is really integral to the Maya, and these 13 stages are counted in our body. So I want to lead with that before we jump into the current astrology. I want to kind of give that lesson that Jose Arguelles felt and probably found from original Mayan teaching that the count starts. The count exists on the 13 major joints of our body, and I'll demonstrate that. He said it started on the right side of our bodies, and I, perhaps as a woman, think it starts on the left. So if you are listening and you've studied with Jose's teachings before, it's okay if you think I'm wrong, because I know that I am making a different decision, and I'll explain why. And it's also, I think, really appropriate for you to then have a choice which one makes more sense to you. I'm going to argue it this way, but let me first explain. We would be starting on the ankle and moving to the knee, the hip, the wrist, the elbow, and then the neck. So that's 7 that I just kind of called off. And then down the other side, and that becomes 13 in total, because the neck is the center point. We only have 1. Jose Arguelles said they started on the right ankle, but when I was also at the beginning of, 25 years ago, I was getting divorced, and I was really digging deep to find my truth around spirituality again, as a young mom instead of a single person seeking in my 20s. And I was taught that the left side of our body is very much feminine and receptive, And it's difficult now that we're working through gender identity quandaries in our culture. Like, I don't want to say it's the woman's side. That's not what I mean. I'm going back to Jungian teaching, I guess, where we all sort of harbor feminine and masculine attributes inside, and then there's left brain, right brain descriptions. And what I was taught that has lodged for me is the left side of my body, almost like absolutely down the middle, is about receptivity. And that feminine in that sense means kind of like able to harbor, nurture. You come to me and I will enclose you and keep you safe. And that masculine energy is directive and outgoing, and it will leave you and get out to the boundaries and explore and also protect from a farther distance. So it's not enclosing, but it is securing a greater enclosure. So they both have dynamic importance, and you can think of it in ancient communities like the hunter-gatherer, warring, usually identified male archetype, the mother at the hearth, the end. Like, that's an ancient picture of human life. And so we don't have to say that we're living that ancient archetype with stereotypes. We're just talking about feminine receptive, masculine directive. So that's why I start on the left, because I believe that we should start with receiving in life. Like, on a spiritual path, you'll see it. I'll try to get to the Mayan astrology in just a moment. The more specific Mayan astrology always is like, we don't start as human beings with, I want to do this, I need God to support me. We start with, what does divinity want for me? And I will be like imbued with that and go out and enact that in physical form, because divinity, however we perceive it, is, not matter. It's not sentient. And so divine impulse fills us because we're like empty vessels willing to be of service to divine intent, versus, I've always wanted to do this and I'm going to do it now. And I sort of have an expectation that the best thing would be if I were supported by God or divinity for that. So I believe receptivity is the starting point for every cycle. And so the cycle starts at the left ankle and then goes to the left knee, the left hip, the left wrist, the left elbow, the left shoulder, and then the neck is the middle 7, then the right shoulder, right elbow, right wrist, right hip, right knee, right ankle. And hey, I know you just tuned in for the astrology of the moment, but I just want to sometimes give these broader strokes because they're really fun to play with. Like, if your knee hurts left or right side, you can start to go, well, does that have something to do with the tone, the ascribed Mayan tone for each of those major joints? I mean, I find life really interesting. Or if you're born on you are born on one of the 13 tones, it's correlated to one part of your body. I'm born on an overtone day, the 5th, and mine is the left elbow. Not a significant part of my body. But what if, you were born on a resonant day and that would be your neck? Like, you would really have the potential to reflect on a lot on how important speech is in your life, or the whole chakra column that runs down the center of our body. These are details, but it's part of the origin story of how we get to the count of 13 and how all of this is embodied, and our bodies are included in a process that is also about the evolution of time. Okay, now we're in the blue storm wave spell. To be honest, I already recorded like half a podcast and aborted it. So that's why I wanted to talk about something different than just blue storm, because I already did it. But I'm not going to do any editing here. I'm trying to make this as painless as possible for me and the least amount of screen time. I'm talking to my phone and I'm willing to upload it, and that's what we're going to get. Pretty pure, pretty pagan. So blue storm right now, here and now, is on day 7. So the 7th day is resonant, and that is the neck day. It's a good day for communicating, I think. We are at red resonance serpent. The midpoint of the blue storm wave spell is a red serpent day, and it is considered a portal day. And that'll be a different monologue, professorial teaching another time, another podcast. But the portals are not, of course, every day of the Zolkin, the 260-day count, but there are 52 portal days within it. And when we come to the red serpent wave spell in 20 days from now, we'll have 10 portal days in a row. So it's kind of fitting that this red resonant serpent day is presaging a wave spell, the red serpent wave spell that has so many portals, because it's I think it's pertinent that it's a portal day to remind us that, like, we have this huge portal run coming. It's a very distinct part of the Zolkin to pass through those 10 portal days in a row. How has the blue storm wave spell been going? ? Well, I'm a blue storm. That's my birth energy. So I have no idea how it's going for you, because it's the difference between me being at home and having an experience and you visiting my home and having an experience. Like, you would have a different impression coming into a blue storm experience than I have for passing through kind of home base for myself. But I know myself really well. And I know that storm is an archetype that we can all understand pretty well, that it's meteorological in nature. The whole podcast video thing that I tossed here was about meteorology, partly because I lost track of what I was saying, and partly because I think a lot of people that follow my work have heard the grade school level meteorology example that I give. But the very quick version is just like the reminder that when it is overcast and rain is gathering but hasn't occurred yet, that is not a storm. A storm is when it's raining. Some places in the world, rain is accompanied by massive thunder and lightning. Not where I live. Some places rarely get rain. So there's this whole spectrum of how the rainstorm presents itself. But it is the release of pressure in the sky that characterizes storm. And the pressure and the obfuscation, the way the sun is inaccessible through like gray overlay of water molecules, that is what the storm is serving to dispel. So on like in mood lingo, the storm can move depression out. The storm can move, mental congestion out, a lack of imagination, kind of like mental exhaustion. Storm is here to clear that out so there is a direct line of receptivity to sunlight and enlightenment. And so I'm kind of pro-storm being perceived not as something that makes it so I can't do anything, but rather ultimately as it makes it so I can return to accessing warmth, heat, joy, and life force, because that's what the sun is to us, animal kind. Doesn't mean it's easy. Blue storm can be intense. That's the feedback I've gotten on a personality level my whole life. I'm living in that body. I feel intense. I haven't experienced this time as super intense yet. And I don't know if it's because I really had been arguing as I did last time I gathered with you here to be able to find the center of the storm. The more intense the storm, the more peaceful the center. Like the bigger these giant Atlantic typhoons and hurricanes are, apparently there could be a mile-long center point, which was just so still, everything swirling around that vortex. So I think I was asking myself, could I remember that the storm is not only the turbulence, it includes the center. And can you kind of beg and and intend or pray, ask to spend more time in the center than getting whipped around the edge. And simply because I am so sensitive, and I would like right now in my life to feel more stillness, even though we're passing through some really intense wave spells, no doubt about it. We have another week of Blue Storm, and then we'll be in Yellow Human. And Yellow Human, which I'll talk about in a week, but you can anticipate, is always a huge reckoning for our species. Well, we're all participants in the Yellow Human species. We don't all have a birth date, but when we get to Yellow Human, it's kind of like, well, what's up with humanity? Just like, when we're in the white dog wave spell, we notice a lot of things about the dogs in our lives, or what they serve, or how we feel in our walk that we're dog-like ourselves. But when we walk as a yellow human, it's another layer of complexity, because that is our incarnation. And there's a lot of humility that humans are being forced to learn right now, after feeling like we knew everything because we developed the internet. We're finding out that we made our lives longer. We did all these cool scientific things, but maybe we have to relearn in a really harsh and exaggerated way right now that we're not Godheads ourselves. I think that's a big part of what's happening on the globe around humanity. So we'll see what happens in the Yellow Human wave spell. But that's an intense one following Blue Storm. And this one followed the White World Bridger wave spell. And after Yellow Human, we have Red Serpent with those portals. And after Red Serpent, we have White Mirror, teaching us about a modern, relevant way to experience human sacrifice, which is what White Mirror meant to the Maya. So here we are in the Blue Storm moment, and you can just picture it like that story I keep telling about congested water molecules that were getting too weighty to hang out in the sky against gravity any longer, falling back to Earth. That there is a way that balance is happening, but not in a flowing way, in a much more cathartic way. Change is happening in our lives rapidly right now, but it's restorative change. There is warmth, joy, and a form of ease that we all feel after the rainstorm. The world is clean, it's bright, the plants are fed and they start to look lush. The earth is dark from, moisture. And the sky can be so crystal clear that we see really far away. Smog and dust has been washed away as well. And then the sun bounces off everything, and there's so much resilient gem-like beauty. And we have to imagine ourselves in that schema as well. Like, I am more beautiful and nurtured and fed from a big rainstorm, even me, my human self. So whatever is happening now that's dynamic and accelerated and awkward, angst-ridden, is serving to return us to some kind of pacific, beautifying, nutrifying, calm and ease at some point. And then I also just sort of always feel like sort of mentioning that it's okay to be emotionally volatile right now if you're not in the eye of the storm, because these processes are all the count of 13 stages, 13 tones right now, 13 days. And we need 13 days of allowing emotional volatility to move through our bodies and our lives, even our relationships. I'm a blue storm, so I have a lot of volatility all the time in a way. I can access that. But if you're not a blue storm and this is the moment, this is just 13 days of having this talent of processing and releasing emotion, blocked emotion, emotion that is congestive in some way, emotion that deserves to see the light of day and will ultimately be nurturing somewhere when it lands. But it's okay if you are disrupted, and it could be anguish, it could be small sadness pouring out of you, the tear fall. All that is right on time. And when we get to yellow human, there'll be so much less of that, because yellow human is more of a doer and buttoned down, focused on some kind of supremacy, using free will to be excellent and have influence. And so this anything that's emotional and cathartic right now is going to end, and is well worth its place in your life through the natural time cycle, because it's all about creating balance, following a calendar that has all these stops in different iconic, totemic, learning. When we get, after we've done all 20 of the stages, that's considered a sort of perfect cycle of life, and we begin again. So everything's accounted for, and it's okay to have time that is rough seas, big tear bursts, wherever you are. So I'll be back. If you're listening to this on Sunday, the 14th, maybe, of January, then it's a White World Bridger Day, and I want to point that out. White World Bridger is the day of death, and it's referencing the wave spell of White World Bridger that we had prior to this one. And so just notice what is being returned in your thought process that could have really been stronger for you a couple weeks ago, but it's like, oh, it's back for a moment, but it should feel pretty integrated, or you will be integrating it, and there's something more peaceful about the teaching of death that you can bring into your being than when we really had 13 days of, in my life, peripherally witnessing, actual mortality and dying, and other people moving in that direction, as well as the feeling state of things falling, away or apart. And that's it. Enjoy your weekend. I am Lisa Starr. I am another yourself, and in Mayan we say, in Lakesh.